Welcome back to the Real Futbol Show. I'm Lizzy with co-host Geno Gonello to talk all things World Cup preview as the USMNT, Canada MNT, and Mexican national team take on their rivals starting tomorrow, Monday. How are you doing, Geno?
I'm doing well. It's World Cup start day. It's Sunday now that we're doing this podcast, and we're getting ready to kick off the World Cup in about 45 minutes at time of recording. So I'm excited for it. I am ready to get to the actual soccer of it all. Obviously, the politics of it all are important to note, but it's finally time to actually play on the pitch, and I'm very, very excited for that.
I truly cannot believe we're here at this point. It's
Can't
World
either.
Cup, trying
Can't
to
believe
get
we're here in
into the
November.
mood.
You know?
Also a point. Um, Absolutely crazy. But to kick on, we have the USMNT take on Wales tomorrow in arguably their biggest match to start off the tournament. We know they play England and then Iran, but really it all stems from a victory, loss, or draw against Wales.
Yeah, I
What are
mean,
you
it
thinking?
it can make all this game is going to make all the difference in the tournament.
Yeah.
It will. I think a draw at least will take a lot of the pressure off going into the English match, the England match. But a win would really help as they catapult themselves forward towards the last two group stage matches. So this is a very big match. I am a typically pessimistic person, so I'm not feeling too great. I'm very nervous to watch the game tomorrow, but at the same time, we're at the World Cup. We were not here 4 years ago, so we have to take joy in that at the very least.
That's
And
kind of sad.
it is kind of sad. It is kind of sad, but
That's not great for you.
no, it's not. It's not great. It was not a good moment. It was not a good moment. But we're past
No.
it. We're past it. We're
Oh,
past
okay.
it. It's 2022. It's not 2018 anymore,
Nope.
and we're here. And it should be very interesting. That's what I'll say. It should be very
100%.
interesting. There's definitely going to be, I'm sure, some twists and turns to this story that we're not expecting.
Okay. Well, on that note, to give a little bit of foundation, going into the tournament, Greg Berhalter and Tyler Adams spoke this morning. The head coach has named Tyler Adams captain for the entire World Cup, which is a very odd choice given that the US men's national team style is usually going game by game and naming one individual leader for that particular game. The US men's national team historically has not had one figure to lead throughout much time. I definitely did not think Tyler Adams would be taking that captain's armband, but then again, there's no experienced figure that would take lead in that race. The only player who's seen World Cup experience is DeAndre Yedlin, but there's nothing assuring him that he will see time on the field, and you really can't have a captain from the bench
Yeah.
legally and technically. So so there was no significant player. If you want to talk backline, maybe Walker Zimmerman, but even with behind at the goalkeeper, it's still an unsure conversation. Though when announcing the roster and asked, Greg Berhalter said that the team is leaning towards Matt Turner to starting goal as their number one. Obviously, previous thoughts led to Zach Steffen, but he didn't even make it to Qatar. So it really was going to be a toss up of who was going to lead in goal and who was going to actually lead the United States. It has since
Yeah.
been Tyler Adams. He named him quite a great guy, a guy's guy, he said, and also mature above his years.
Well,
This is, yeah,
what I will say is Tyler Adams is typically, when healthy and on the U.S. men's national team, the captain of the U.S. men's national team. I think most of the time he wears the captain's armband, at least in Concacaf qualifying, from what I can remember. I think he's the perfect choice. I think he's a guy that, out of anyone there, I think he's the most. I think he's probably one of the bigger leaders. I mean, we don't know what goes on inside the locker room, but I think he is one of the bigger leaders on that team. Guys seem to respect him. Guys seem to follow him, follow his lead. He has continuously proven himself at each stage that he has kind of gone to, from Bundesliga to Premier League. I think he's the perfect guy. He gels that midfield. He is the heart of that midfield. So I have no problems with it. I don't think that there's anybody else other than maybe Pulisic that you could put at
Yeah.
there, but I wouldn't personally put him as the captain.
Oh, wait, interesting. Why?
I don't know. He doesn't seem. He obviously is outspoken. He speaks out when he has to and all that stuff. But I think that Tyler Adams is more of a leader figure. I don't get the.
Okay.
Not that people wouldn't follow Christian Pulisic, but I think that I don't get the vibe that he is captain material, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
It's hard to explain. It's hard to put into words, but when I look at Christian, when I look at the two up against each other, for some reason, Tyler Adams seems more of that captain figure.
yeah, I think we should emphasize that the bar is really low because there is not one predominant figure on that team. But yeah, Christian Pulisic is hot-headed and outspoken, and whether you're looking for a captain to calm the field, he will not be that guy. But
I think the reason you choose Tyler Adams is because if you watch every single U.S. men's national team game, somebody goes down, gets hit with a hard tackle, Tyler Adams is the first guy there to defend him. Tyler Adams is the first guy shouting things out. Like, I think Tyler Adams, at least from what we've seen, has shown the most leadership potential out of the entire U.S. men's national team that I can think of off the top. I mean, you barely could figure out who your number 9 is, so it's not going to be whoever the number 9 is. You don't know who your starting goalkeeper is. It's not going to be, it's Matt Turner, but still, the back line personally is not. I mean, I know they're leadership figures on their own teams, and I know Walker Zimmerman has a case with what he's done off the field and how he's led the charge in certain things off the field. But I think on the field, Tyler Adams is the best choice there. I don't really know who else it would be personally.
Well, I think that's my point. I think Greg Berhalter's rotation style has led to uncertainty on the field. But now we know that with Tyler Adams as captain, he's most likely to make those 3 games in the group stage, and we don't know, potentially beyond. But heading into this game against Wales, their head-to-head record does lean in favor of Berhalter's side. They've beaten Wales once before and then drawn once. So Wales has never left a game victorious, which I guess, friendlies are always friendlies and may not mean anything, but that's where they're headed. And the United States record in the past 5 games does trump Wales. Wales has not won in their past 5 games, whereas the U.S. men's national team come in with 2 victories, 3 draws, and 1 loss. And we know that loss was in the friendly against Japan, 2-0, which was definitely concerning. They won also in a friendly and in a Concacaf Nations League match. So they hold the record. It's definitely interesting, but who knows? Who knows? Now, doing starting lineups, I have my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours first.
Yeah, so I think that when it comes to the starting lineup for the U.S. men's national team, I think your back line is going to consist of Anthony Robinson on the left. I think you got your right back situation. Seems like it's going to be Serginho Dest because it seems like he's healthy. It's going to be Walker Zimmerman at center back. And it's a matter of who plays next to him, whether it be Aaron Long or Tim Ream, I think.
I prefer Tim Ream personally.
I would prefer Tim Ream, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think I would prefer him. It's hard because I think Tim Ream is more physical, is better alongside Anthony Robinson, obviously, because he plays next to him. Obviously, there's the factor that he has not played alongside Walker Zimmerman many times, if at all. He has not played for the U.S. men's national team in the last year. But I think Tim Ream is your center back, in my personal opinion. If you bring him in to combat those physical style players, the Premier League style players. The big thing that was a huge point that Greg Peralta made was the physicality of the teams that they'll be facing. I think you have to put Tim Ream in there. Obviously, Matt Turner is your starting goalkeeper, as it seems he's healthy alongside Serginho Dest. In the midfield, I don't think there's any question. I think it's Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Tyler Adams in the midfield three. On the left side, it's Christian Pulisic. In the middle, for me, it's Josh Sargent.
Okay.
Whether Josh Sargent will be the starting striker, who on earth knows? Because
interesting.
I can 100% see Greg choosing someone else, but I think Josh Sargent is your starting number 9.
Okay.
And on the right side, I think it will be probably Gio Reyna.
Yeah, obviously.
But I wouldn't be surprised if Tim Weah would be featured there. I think Gio Reyna's, like, if he's looking for something different and he's looking for something speedy or someone who can get in behind the back line, then Tim Weah is the guy I think that features there. But again, like I said, I can't imagine it won't be Gio Reyna.
Right. I do think Gio Reyna is the best option. I think he's one of the U.S. men's national team best players.
I think he's one of the best players too. I would agree.
I think to your point about Tim Ream or Aaron Long, historically we would think Aaron Long just because of the partnership and the work he's done alongside Walker Zimmerman, but Berhalter has shown through his selection in the World Cup roster that he's favoring individuality over U.S. men's national team history. Though I do want to point out that it contradicts what he said in an exclusive interview with us a couple weeks ago, where he said he's definitely putting into balance the history they have together, players' ability to mesh well with the team, and club performance to an extent. He did mention that last and made it a point to say U.S. men's national team history is super important to us. We've been monitoring these players at our camps. They've been training together. But obviously, at the omission of Ricardo Pepi, we know that to a certain extent, that's not true. So I wouldn't be surprised if Team Rim comes on. He hasn't seen time with Walker Zimmerman at the back. We don't know if there's a duo there. But he seems to be prioritizing individual moments and individual performance at this point. So again, not a surprise to me there. Serginho Dest is definitely an interesting figure. We've seen him on and off injuries for a while. So no stability there. It's a little bit concerning because obviously you want kind of a brick wall at the back. And I'm not really sure you're going to get that. You have a couple players, which is definitely interesting with the U.S. men's national team, that are considered glass to a certain extent, Gio Reyna being one of them, Serginho Dest being one of them. Concerning, obviously, because this isn't a one-game tournament. You have 2 difficult games ahead. I know a lot of people put it past the U.S. men's national team to beat Iran easily. I don't think it'll be such an underestimated victory, but that's also concerning. If you play your strongest team and they get injured against Wales, you pretty much have 2 gaping holes. So that's obviously a huge concern. In my starting lineup, put Ferreira over Josh Sargent. Historically speaking, we know he plays as the desired number 9. Josh Sargent hasn't come in the past, but why did he make the roster? He's at a great moment right now in his club career.
I just think I think personally Josh Sargent is the best number 9 that currently the United States can put up front right now. I don't think that. Again, this all stems from, I guess, maybe the way I wish the United States played rather than how they do play, I guess. But Jesus Ferreira has not been solid. I mean, he hasn't scored in his last, 7 games in regular in MLS play, and hasn't scored in a while for the United States men's national team. Haji Wright hasn't even featured for the U.S. men's national team more than maybe a couple times that I can remember. I have to look up exactly. I forget what we said. But for me, Josh Sargent is the best number 9. I think he is physical up front. He knows how to deal with the physical center backs. I think he can attack in a way that's different and better than the other two options. I think he can get ahead on the ball. I think he can pass the ball and use him
Yeah.
as a target man. I personally think that Josh Sargent should be the number 9. I think the way he's playing, and I think the way that he has proven himself in this to make this World Cup team after so much doubt was cast against him. I think Josh Sargent should be your number 9. As we mentioned, who knows what Greg does, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely concerning. But turning it over to Wales, again, they come in with no victories in the past 5 games, and they are suffering injuries of their own. Joe Allen, who we know is likely to make that starting lineup, hasn't played for Swansea since September after nursing a hamstring injury. So, and we know obviously Gareth Bale has been crucial for LAFC in their final game, but prior did not feature absolutely at all. So it'll definitely be interesting from their perspective. But to finish off the US men's national team segment, we definitely have some exciting videos. We have Greg Berhalter speaking to us exclusively about what his take is on the tournament.
We are really looking at it as 2 tournaments. You have the group phase, which you need to be in the top 2 to earn the right to play in the knockout phase. And we can't get ahead of ourselves and think we're just going to fly into the knockout stage. The group stage is very competitive. Every play, every action matters to the result and to you getting through to the next round. So we take that first, and then we try to move on to the knockout stage. And once we're there, it gets fun because anything can happen then. And we know that if we play our best game on that day, we can beat any team in the world. So why not try to keep going and try to keep advancing?
Yeah.
Interesting words.
Supreme confidence. It's been something that he has mentioned multiple times and how he looks at the tournament. And I think it shows in his selection with the talk of the physicality. Again, the teams that he is going to be playing in this World Cup, that he knows he's going to be playing, that he knows he has to beat to get to play anybody else. 2 of those teams feature a lot of Premier League players, which, if you ask a lot of people in the top 5 leagues in Europe, I would argue that England is probably the most physical of those 5 leagues, probably. So it shows a lot in his roster choices. It shows a lot in his comments that he's focusing primarily on the group stage, and everything after the group stage to Greg Berhalter seems like a bonus.
Yeah, interesting words. On our best day, we can beat anyone in the world. Interesting words from a head coach who tied 1-1 against El Salvador. But moving on to Mexico.
Talk about this. Concacaf is hard. People don't
No, we
understand.
know CONCACAF is hard, but you tied 1-1
Everybody
against El
says-
Salvador. All right.
Everybody says, but can you do it on a cold night in Stoke? Can you do it on a hot afternoon in El Salvador? That's what I'm asking right now.
The U.S. men's national team could not. Great point. Mexico, just like the United States, they play their most important match in the first round. They play Poland, which will be, again, the deciding factor, make it or break it, before they go on to face Saudi Arabia and Argentina in Group C. It's definitely an interesting match in that it's 50-50. It can go either way, but it'll be hard.
You don't sound so confident over there.
I mean, it's not about confidence. I think Mexico is prepared in the way Poland is going to play. Poland is prepared and knowing what Mexico are going to do to try and hold them back. So to start off, I think we need to address Lewandowski. They do have one of the greatest players at the moment. He went out on a press conference a couple days ago and said, we know what Mexico are going to do. We know players are going to target me. But at the same time, that leaves open space for scoring elsewhere, which does make a good point. If they played offensively, we know that their style is to hold it back, stay at the back, and then at a set piece be extremely lethal. And in a previous episode, we compared their style of play to Sweden, which Mexico lost 2-1 in their last friendly before heading to Qatar, which, again, another source of concern. But Lewandowski, in saying that, knows that he's a huge target, and everybody everywhere knows that for Mexico, Lewandowski is going to be a huge target in the sense that a lot of people say if you hold him back, there's just 10 more players on the field. But yes, there's 10 more players on the field. However, it is important to say Poland has not made it out of the group stage since 1986.
Wow.
That is rough.
There you go.
Yes.
Which interesting. What happened in 1986? Did Mexico last host the World Cup?
Exactly. But at that point,
I don't
also
know. Pretty bad omen, my personal opinion.
important to say that at that point it was the top 3 teams in the group stage. So that definitely made it a factor that when it changed to 2, Poland simply could not break into that top 2. In 2002 and 2006, they failed to make it out of the group stage. Now, if you want to bring Lewandowski into this and say, well, now we have that kind of player, he debuted for Poland in 2008. And important to note that Poland did not qualify for the World Cup in 2010 or 2014. And so it definitely becomes an interesting factor. Historically, Poland as a nation does not do well in international tournaments. There's been a lot of speculation and a lot of attention on Lewandowski, but as a whole, they have not performed well, which gives Mexico way. Yes, we definitely don't have that one highlight figure to look up to the way that Poland does, but that might just give them the edge. And heading into a potential starting 11, I'm going to go for Guillermo Ochoa, Jorge Sanchez, Cesar Montes, Hector Moreno, Jesus Gallardo in the back line. It's no prediction there. I think we've seen it in the past couple friendlies. That's going to be the back 4. When it hasn't been, it's just because Jorge Sanchez has been replaced by Kevin Alvarez because he's been away with Ajax. So when Tata Martino opts for like a Liga MX starting 11, that's when Kevin Alvarez comes in. A great second choice. And then the midfield gets a little interesting. Most likely going to be HH, Charlie Rodriguez, and Luis Chavez. Now, there's been a lot of talk of not including Edson Alvarez, especially when it talks about his stature. One of the tallest figures in the men's national team, and when you're talking set pieces, we want him near that goalpost. But I think Tata Martino is going to opt for an offensive midfield, knowing that Poland is going to stay back. So having Edson there provides a great defensive opportunity and a great defensive player. But if he opts for that offensive style, then he's going to be benched, which bars the question, why are you benching arguably one of your best players? But different question. And then that top 3, difficult to say, but Chucky Lozano, Henry Martin, Alexis Vega. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, about Raul Jimenez. I don't think he's ready, fit enough to start against Poland, which is why Henry Martin is going to come into play. If he is fit, then yeah, he'll start. But if we're talking again, that hierarchy that Gerardo Martino has set forth, it's Raul Jimenez, Henry Martin, Rogelio Funes Mori. If Raul is not fit enough or not in rhythm enough, we know he's healthy enough from injury, but what we saw against Sweden is he's a little bit off rhythm, missing those runs a little bit back when Chucky was forward. Just the timing is a little bit off, which is normal for a player who hasn't seen the field in several weeks. So obviously knowing that, we know Henry Martin can come into play. He's been in great form for Club America, scored, I believe it was 12 goals in the regular season, which record, great.
Good by any standards, good in any league.
Exactly. And though he might not be that associative number 9 that Tata Martino always talks about, he is that figure of stand-in. However, we know that if Raul Jimenez doesn't play, our number 9 is not that star player to look forward to. We want Chucky Lozano to thrive on the wing, and Alexis Vega, which I personally had said previous occasion that I'm very excited for. I think he's going to seal his move to Europe, but we will see that a little later on.
So, just going on to the matchup as a whole in terms of the Poland-Mexico matchup, I think it's similar to what we will probably talk about in the in the Canada breakdown. But I think that you got to take advantage of the center backs that Poland are going to play. And I think that creativity should take precedence over everything else in this situation. Because like you said, Poland is going to sit back, absorb pressure, hope to counter, hope to get a set piece. There probably won't be too much attacking on the Polish side. So
right. And Mexico thrives.
Yes.
Offensively, that first half against Sweden saw Mexico creative on the front foot, pushing forward, seeing opportunities on goal. We missed a couple hitting the goalpost and hitting the crossbar. So we know Mexico to be offensive.
Mm-hmm.
We know they can do it. My biggest concern is that Mexico does tend to make those little mistakes defensively, which we know then lead to set pieces, and Poland can be lethal on, especially when you have Lewandowski on the ball. So that would be the biggest concern there. I don't think attacking is going to be an issue for Mexico. They're creative on the front foot. They can take possession. Against Sweden, I believe it was 70% possession in that first half, with several opportunities on goal. So they're definitely going to sit back and wait for Mexico to make that one necessary mistake in a set piece.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because, like you said, I mean, it seems like it's not going to be with players like Chucky Lozano and the players that Mexico have, creativity, creating space, creating those creative balls will not be a problem. It becomes then finishing those creative balls or finishing those creative moves that then becomes the issue. So that'll be really the focus of this. Can Mexico defend set pieces, and can Mexico on the offensive end be creative enough and finish those creative chances?
Yeah, and to your point, there's also been a theory going around within Mexican national team camp of adding Nestor Araujo over Jorge Sanchez. Now, defensively, Jorge Sanchez is superior. However, Nestor Araujo does tower over a lot of players. His physicality trumps Jorge Sanchez, trumps Kevin Alvarez, and measures up to Poland. So speaking about those set pieces, you want a player like Nestor Araujo on the field, which kind of puts into balance, well, do you want superiority defending, or do you want that towering player near your goal on those set pieces? Very interesting. He's great with his head. So there's a lot of choices for Tata Martino. I think we're going to opt for an offensive style of play, benching Eric Gutierrez, benching Edson Alvarez, and then obviously the question remains, are you benching Raul Jimenez? Many think we will. But I do also want to point out that Mexico are not the only team suffering from injuries and the only team holding on to a player who is not ready for that first game. There's been a lot of talk of only Mexico having Raul Jimenez and hoping and praying that he'll be ready. The World Cup in November has forced injuries to become the main topic of conversation, and we're seeing players drop, unfortunately, like flies heading into their first game. So it's not unique to Mexico. It's interesting. I do think Tata Martino has a contingency plan, which is why he talks consistently about that hierarchy. So not unique to us. Definitely important to point out to the fans that are extremely concerned about Mexico being the only one to suffer injuries.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. When we talk about Canada, we're going to talk about you can talk about it with the United States. With obviously Sergiño Dest says he is ready, but who knows if he actually is fully fit. Luca de la Torre is definitely not fit for the first match. That was made clear by Greg Berhalter when we spoke to him after the roster announcement. So it's not just Mexico. I mean, it's everybody. With the way this World Cup is and the timing of it and everything, the amount of games these players have played over the last few years with COVID and everything getting jumbled up, the moving back of the Euros, barely having any breaks. Mexico is not the only team dealing with this, and it wouldn't surprise me if we have a kind of crazy tournament because of how many injuries and even now, there's still the possibility for injuries in this World Cup due to the workload that these players have experienced over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I do want to say, though, I think Mexico is one of the better prepared teams in terms of injuries. We knew early on that Tecatito was not going to be fit enough to make it into that roster. There's a lot of conversation into why he was still part of the conversation, whether he was going to make it, whether he wasn't, why he was included in that preliminary list. I do think it was a sign of respect by Gerardo Martino and the national team staff. He was never going to be fit enough to make it, and no one pretended that he would be. So we found that out very, very early on. Raul Jimenez, again, we knew what we were dealing with, and we had a contingency plan. I don't believe France did with Benzema. Lukaku, we also just found out he's out. Mané with Senegal. There's so many starting figures that have been dropped from their roster, and I don't think normal, but I don't think these teams had a contingency plan for that. So that leaves Mexico prepared. Whether that makes it better or worse, I don't know, but at least they were prepared.
That's all that really matters, though, right? That's all that really matters.
I think winning matters.
Well,
it'd be important to win.
Before the winning, I think the only thing that matters is having the contingency plan for all possible worst case scenarios. But yeah, it's sorry for the constant ringing on my end. If you can hear that over there, my friends who do not watch soccer consistently, one of my buddies just texted me the exact text was, are we going to be good at the whole soccer thing? So
we'll tell him to tune in and we will discuss it all.
Yes, so I'll have to turn him on to the podcast, but yeah, so
no questions,
going back to Mexico and away from the dinging. Yeah, I mean, I think having the contingency plan is going to help Mexico. Hopefully Raul Jimenez can start, but if he can play at least a significant role off the bench for the Mexican national team, but we will not know until these games start. We can talk and talk and talk, but it will not matter because whatever happens Tuesday for the Mexican national team and after that, it's going to happen, and we can't do anything about it. So
no, I don't predict a clean sheet from either side, though. I definitely think it'll be a 2-1 situation. Historically, though, if Mexico receives that first goal, it takes a hit on the mood and the atmosphere on the pitch. Mexico is a very passionate team, but it goes both sides. It can either hinder or it can help. But again, it's a make or break it game, just like it is for the United States against Wales. Now, Canada, it's a little bit different because expectations are on the floor. And they made their first World Cup since 1986, giving them just fun at this World Cup. They made it. They are a dark horse. John Herdman, their head coach, has talked continuously about their ability to be that dark horse, their expectations, what they want to do at the World Cup. I think internationally, no one is expecting Canada to shine through, especially barring all these injuries that they've had to go through and plan for. Goalkeeping situation is not great, but Geno, lead us through Canada MNT. What can we expect against Belgium?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the beauty of this Canadian men's national team is the fact that there's not one person in the entire world that is expecting them to get out of this group. So they're there, they're going to go, they're going to play the way they play, and they're going to go out there with the free spirit of not having any pressure on them to perform. They, it seems, will not have Alphonso Davies. It doesn't seem like he will be fit for at least the first match. He's still dealing with a hamstring injury, which those are always very tricky. Yeah. So who knows what capacity he plays in. John Herdman has made a point of saying yesterday, he said that, they performed very well without Alphonso Davies in the CONCACAF qualifying stages, going 5-2-0 in the time that he was absent from the matches that he could not participate in because he was ill. So Alphonso Davies, not having him may not be a make or break in terms of I guess, the final results. It may not make a difference not having him, but having Alphonso Davies obviously changes a lot for this Canadian men's national team because he is, without a doubt, the best player on the team. So they'll be without him. There's new injury news as well now. As we know, Maxime Crepeau is not on the roster because of the injury he suffered during the MLS Cup final. It seems now that it's possible that their starting goalkeeper, Milan Borjan, will not or may not be available as well. He's dealing with a little bit of a knock. So that's an update that was provided yesterday. And then Canada's most creative midfielder, Steven Eustachio. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, so I apologize. But he is their most creative midfielder, and it's possible that he will not be available as well, as he also picked up a knock. So a lot of, as we mentioned, a lot of injury problems for a lot of different teams. Canada up there with the worst of them. You think about France with Conte and Paul Pogba and Benzema just recently. So Canada is already suffering some setbacks.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, they're just happy to be here, I think. I think they're just happy to be here. I don't think this is a World Cup where anybody expects them, including themselves. They can go into this match, like I said, free of any expectations or pressure, because if they go and they win a game and tie a game and end up on 4 points, I think 95% of the world will say, wow, they really performed well at this World Cup, with Morocco, Croatia, and Belgium, the other three teams in their group.
It's a difficult group. Also important, they didn't even plan a World Cup kit. During the Concacaf qualifying cycle, their own organization didn't even think they would make it through. Exactly. But back to the goalkeeping situation, we think Dane St. Clair is going to step in, Minnesota United's goalkeeper. Yes. He, during the regular season, did well. He managed a significant number of clean sheets. They did not make the playoffs. Wasn't obviously entirely Dane St. Clair's fault, but we've seen him to be a decent goalkeeper. He has 2 caps, I believe you said, with
he has
the
2
Canadian
men's for the Canadian men's national team, as far as I have seen. So,
all right, well, like a newish figure, which wouldn't be unique to the World Cup. We see Luis van Gaal, the Netherlands head coach, call up a lot of new figures. Xavi Simons is coming in to that team without ever having played a senior match with Netherlands. So doesn't necessarily mean a bad omen, but as you said, they are very happy to be there. They're the underdogs. If they do manage to walk out with 4 points, no one will bat an eye, but celebrate. So the expectations mean a lot. Whereas for Mexico, we know the expectations are nearly impossible. And for the U.S. men's national team, it does mean round of 16. And then from there, I think everybody will be content. But
for here, it's not, there's not, which is great. I would love to have, I personally, in my personal opinion, when teams don't have that pressure, that's a lot of the time when they can perform to their fullest potential. So, it'll be very interesting to see Canada. Dane St. Clair is the only other goalkeeper currently on the roster that has any caps. James Pansimis, it does not have any caps for the Canadian men's national team, as far as I have, as far as the research that I did stated. So I would assume it's going to be Dane St. Clair. I think he, like you said, he had a good season in the MLS. He made the All-Star team, which was great. He performed well. How that translates to the World Cup is a different story. Obviously, national team is a different story than the MLS. You don't get as much time to train. You don't get as much time to work that relationship and that chemistry with those other players. So,
I think it'll definitely be interesting across CONCACAF nations. Now, we're going to be hosting the Real Futbol Show after every round of games. So US plays first, then Mexico, then Canada, and then we'll meet up to talk about all the action that we saw during that first round of matches.
I think we're also going to be doing some previews beforehand on Twitter as well. So if you see this little ticker at the bottom here, It
Follow
says
it.
where our Twitter is and where you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. So stay tuned on both those because we'll have that. Before we wrap up the Canadian men's national team talk, though, real quick on their game with Belgium, I think it's important to note that they're going to have to utilize their speed up front to find any sort of way through against this Belgian national team. They'll have the Belgian national team is the oldest team at the World Cup. They have old, aging, slow center backs. So utilizing their speed up front is very important for Canada in this match. And then defensively, the creativity of the middle five for Belgium is going to be the end-all, be-all of Canadians' defense.
Definitely interesting.
Yes.
But yeah. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to leave that in the comments or reach out to us on Twitter.
Yes, please do. We don't have our Twitter things on here, and I haven't figured out how to add them. But if you go on, you'll find us. You can find us. If you go on the last episodes, they're on there.
But yeah, stay tuned, and we'll be back to recap all the information.